Hello, hello. My name is Brian Conkle, and welcome back to Let's Talk Ray Bradbury. Hopefully, this episode goes better than the last one, during which my computer crashed while I was mid-recording, and I lost all of my notes. But I managed to pull it off fairly well, I think. But we shall see. I've been having a lot of computer issues recently, but I was sort of deep diving into how to repair it yesterday, so hopefully I solved the problem. Not really sure. Also, I think it's worth noting that if you've been around the channel for a long time, something new here, something different, and that is the air conditioner's gone. Maybe this doesn't matter to anybody else but me, but I sort of mark the passage of time in my videos by noticing, is there an air conditioner in the window or not? Clearly the air conditioner is gone, and that means we are into the colder months. Here we are, mid-October, so the year is getting on, but the show must go on. So here we are. Let's talk Ray Bradbury, episode number 296. Today we're going to be talking about the 12th of 21 short stories in the author's 1997 collection, Driving Blind. Today's story is Someone in the Rain. If you're new to the channel, the way that this works is I do a very brief synopsis of what happens in the story. And then I wrap up a very late analysis, just some thoughts and things about what it all means. Is it a good story? Where does it stack up for me? And then we get on with our days. I mainly do this for my own entertainment, but I realize from time to time some of you have found these videos and found them useful, which is also pretty cool. So, synopsis. A man and his wife, Linda, we don't know his name, her name is Linda, have driven from Chicago into Wisconsin to stay at an old resort. They managed to rent the same cabin that some 20 years earlier, in the late 20s, he had stayed with his family, namely his cousins, who he talks about quite a bit. And the cabin, he notices, looks pretty much the same. There's even his initials carved into one of the windowsills that he'd done 20 years ago. And the communal bathrooms still have the same horrible smell and infestation by moths, which they talk about quite a bit. But the trees have grown some 20 years, so things aren't quite the way that they were. Nothing really does stay the same, no matter how much we think it does. It's raining. It could rain for days, and they sort of relax for a couple of hours, take a nap before the plan is to meet with their friend Sam and walk up the hill to the hotel, the resort, to have dinner in the restaurant, and then perhaps spend some time dancing in this pavilion, which we were told when it was originally built, it cost millions of dollars. It was very fancy. It was a very a very happening place. So they do this, they go up, but it's the end of the season, the restaurant's sort of half full, it's not great. But afterwards, as the rain continues to fall, they go down to the pavilion, which this is the first time he's been in. When he was a child, there was no children allowed inside, and he would have to watch with his friends and his family from outdoors in the bushes. And so he requests a song, they dance, but it's not quite as spectacular as he had hoped. What used to be a 20-piece band is now only a 9-piece band. And as they're dancing and preparing to go back to the cabin, he notices a couple little faces looking in through the rain from about beyond the sides of the pavilion, and he sort of wishes that he was one of them. Again, a kid sort of looking at the world from the outside onto the adults on the inside. This is another one of those Bradbury tales, quite like the last one, which was very light on plot and actual sort of traditional story elements, but it's big on feeling and nostalgia, and it managed to, within itself, speak to a basic truth of humanity that I think is a basic truth, at least it is for me, which is this idea of nostalgia for places of our youth, but then we do eventually go back to them and we find that they're not quite the same. And whether they're the same or not, we're not the same. But we return to these places looking to connect with our childhood, but we can't quite do it because nothing is quite the same as it was. But it is familiar, even down to the smells. I'm reminded of the smell of a local state park here, which for decades had this horrible smelling bathrooms before they were updated eventually to modern versions. But when you smell that, you knew that you were in the bathroom or in the changing room before you go swimming in the pool or in the creek. And so that's, for me, one of my touch tones. There's another one that is a a church camp that I used to go to as a child, and there's certain smells and sights of that place which would certainly come back to me. And I have no idea if that place is still in business or not, to truth be told. The character in his youth was there. Would have been just before the Depression, mid-late 20s. And here we are now, 20 years later, puts it just after World War II. And that must have been quite a shock. Just the way that the world changed from Depression to 2 world wars, and then what came after. And here he was sort of looking back at a different time. And I quite think of, I think of like the Overlook Hotel, and I think of the Titanic, and I think of, and all these instances of, the well-to-do having, gala balls and, fancy dress and all these things that were sort of left over from the old world and a different era. And, now there's certainly people who still live in that fancy type of way, but it's sort of almost like costume, like dress-up time, as opposed to what the world is now like. Despite economic problems and a lot of wealth accumulating at the top, there is, generally speaking, we all live a little bit, most of us live a little bit better than we would have in the past. So somehow at the end of the day, this place, this hotel, this resort seems a little bit passé. It sort of reminds me of, there's an old, 150-year-old family-owned amusement park a couple hours from here. It's just not like going to Disney. It's not like going to Six Flags or anything like that. So it's sort of that difference where, while there was a world where maybe you weren't quite welcome as a child or as a less fortunate person, there's also a glamour to it. Sort of like looking at, documentaries of the Gilded Age and all these certain people living, in the lap of luxury, and you're sort of on the outside, but at the same time, you despise it, but you also like the glamour of it. And there was always this hope that, hey, maybe I could join them someday. But here he is, 20 years later, this character has his chance to join that world, but he finds that world has moved on to somewhere else, to something else. And he's feeling a little bit depressed about that. But there's the story. Yes, Someone in the Rain, referring to the little children who were watching, also him watching decades earlier into this world, this window into this world that he sort of never quite really gets to experience in its heyday. Not a bad little tale. Again, it's this type of story. It's sort of an acquired taste. It's all based around a feeling. If you're looking for, like plot elements, story, that type of thing, you're not going to find it here. But if you're looking to sort of vibe on a certain type of nostalgia, which Bradbury was an expert at, sort of kindling in the human heart, this is your story. And I quite like it. I think I will probably read this one again someday. There's many stories that I've read by him, but I'll probably never touch again. But this one, I think I'll do this because it does pull at my little heartstrings. All right then. Next time we'll be looking at a story called, and excuse the pronunciation probably, Madame et Monsieur Shill, which will be story number 297 here on Let's Talk Ray Bradbury. Thank you, and I'll see you again next time.